Welcome back to Operation Freedom, folks. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our ancillary bunker linked to our main Freedom Bunker in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. We're here for you every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern, but it doesn't start and stop on Sundays from 2 to 5 Eastern. We are available 24/7 with extra shows, content, guests, archives, analysis that you will not get from any other platform on the planet. We are there at davejanda.com 24/7. Stop on by. You will not be disappointed. You might get a little angry when you read the information that we provide because it's information that the globalist syndicate does not want you to have. Our goal is to put you ahead of that curve. Actually, it's a curve that the globalists have constructed that ends in a brick wall with the shattering of your remaining freedoms, your liberties, your future, your life, and our constitutional republic. And we provide you an off-ramp for your freedom. What is a little bit surprising to me is how few people take that off-ramp and how many people are just destined to hit that brick wall. But it is what it is. And we are doing everything we possibly can to make it so that you don't hit that brick wall, as are my guests. The theme for today's show is that the events we see playing out, not just in our country, but around the world, are occurring not because of accident, or not because, well, it's just a bad coincidence. Or it's not because of incompetence. You see, these situations that are occurring around the world are playing out because they're all planned and they're coordinated. And they further the globalist cult's agenda of obtaining more power, control, and more financial resources. It's that simple. In the first segment today, we attack the issue of this man-made climate change agenda. Second segment with Victor Avila, we focused on the border invasion and how it's all planned. And now in this segment, we're going to dissect the geopolitical events around the world with someone who is an expert on the geopolitical front because of his background, Commander Scott Snow. He logged over 3,200 fighter hours in F-14, 16, and 18s, 618 landings on aircraft carriers, 335 combat hours in a cockpit. In addition, Scott was in charge of aviation operations for all carrier groups in the Pacific and oversaw operations for the Top Gun program. It is my honor to welcome back Commander Scott Snow. Scott, welcome back.
Well, thank you, Doc. Honor and pleasure to be with you again.
So, Scott, when I mentioned the fact that all this is a plan, all this is an operation, that this isn't what we see happening is not an accident around the world. It's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. It's not from incompetence. It's all planned. Many people say that's conspiracy theory. So is that conspiracy theory, Scott, or is that conspiracy reality?
Well, it's conspiracy fact. If you want to take a quote from Andy Schectman, it's too stupid to be stupid. It's planned out. They can't be this dumb and continue to make what we look at a logical conclusion or a logical step forward, and they're going to do the exact opposite. They're going to take the worst choice available on the table. So we have course of action 1, course of action 2, course of action 3. Utter stupidity. Let's go with 3.
Scott, I want to start with something that came out of the United States Air Force Secretary's mouth this week, and that is that he admitted that less than one third of the F-35 fighters built by Lockheed Martin are currently operationally capable. Scott, many people don't find that troublesome. I find that incredibly troublesome, in addition to the wasted hundreds of billions of dollars we're talking about here. Less than a third of the F-35s are operationally capable, according to the U.S. Air Force Secretary?
Yes. It's one where you have to have an aircraft fully mission capable. You have to have every single system on it running. You have the F-35 that is one of the most complex fighter jets that they've ever put together, and they're so tough to maintain to those standards to keep them 100% operational that there's compromises all the time. So they'll take, and even go back to my days flying F-16s or F-14s or the F-18. Oftentimes you go through and you look at the book and, okay, this system's not working, this system's not working, but are the systems working for me to do whatever job I have today? And that's where they are. So usually our full mission capable rate would be at least 50%. If we were at tier 1 status and we had parts availability above anybody else, so when we're forward deployed on cruise or in combat, we could get up to the 70-80%.
Since we're talking about fighters, there was a Russia put out an announcement yesterday that, and many people don't think this is a significant announcement. I actually do, but I could be wrong. You're the pro here. Russia announced that they're transferring a couple dozen Su-35 fighters to Iran. There are a lot of folks that are saying, "Oh, well, that's not a big deal." I actually think that's a big deal. Who? Am I off?
No, that is a very big deal. It is one where their direct support for Iran, aside from financial support in being part of the BRICS nations, you're seeing more of a coalescing between Russia, between China, between Iran, between Brazil, all these major countries that are now supporting each other not only financially but militarily. The Su-35 is a very formidable fighter, and it's one where in the way Russia builds combat weaponry, it's built to be fixed with a hammer. We build it to be fixed with an ohm meter and a PhD from MIT to try and make all the ones and zeros talk well together and actually work.
So have you had a choice between flying an F-35 on a mission or versus an Su-35? What would you choose?
I take the Su-35 and I put a digital RF memory jammer on it and be pretty much king of the playground at that point. The F-35 is such a compromise in capabilities that even people that fly it now, they call it Fat Amy, because it is such they had to widen the fuselage so much to accommodate the Marine Corps' idea that they wanted to be able to go up and down and replace the Harrier. So it ends up being too slow, just unable to be a fighter jet. It's just it's a big, giant, fat couch that's flying through the sky that has a ton of sensors on board, so they can start directing things. But when it comes down to it, it is fighters need to be fast. They need to be agile, and it is neither of those.
Well, and Scott, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but a number of months ago, we had an F-35 where a pilot ejected and then it was flying by itself. I think it was around North Carolina or something like that. And it came out later that potentially that this F-35 was hacked. And when it got hacked, that's what led to the pilot either him ejecting himself or actually whoever hacked into the plane ejecting him and then taking control of the F-35. Am I remembering that? Am I remembering that event correctly?
It's very possible. So the electronic protect that we used to build into all of our frontline fighters going back decades was all during the Cold War. Mm-hmm. As soon as the wall came down in 89 and 90, we stopped doing anything about it. And so now something as simple as an EMP or even a lightning strike is easily going to really mess up an airplane. With that, too, even just look at it from a standpoint of U.S. drones versus Chinese drones. And the U.S. drones are getting hacked in Ukraine to a point that Ukraine is buying Chinese drones for their forces because the software in the U.S. stuff is crap. You get the same thing with the fighter jets.
So, Scott, I want to talk about the forefront war that the globalist cult is implementing. One front being in Russia, Ukraine, the other being in the Middle East, another being the, I don't know, on the back burner, soon to move to the front burner on China-Taiwan front, and the fourth being the domestic war that they're waging, not just in the United States domestically, but practically in every country. I particularly want to talk about the Middle East. There's been a lot of things happen in the Middle East. And Scott, you and I did an Insider Insight show a number of months ago. And it was right after the event on October 7th, 2023, when the Hamas thugs penetrated the most secure border security system with one of the most well-funded, well-equipped militaries in the world, with one of the most highly regarded intelligence services, groups of services led by Mossad, was able to penetrate that border security fence without anyone knowing that it was going to happen, let alone happening. They did it with pickup trucks, hang gliders, pitchforks, and shovels. Scott, at the time, you and I said there's something really off with all of that. And one wondered, which a lot of people had a problem with, when we said, was this allowed to happen, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Well, one of the theories you and I put out there was that this would ultimately be used so that Gaza could be entered and a land grab would ensue. And a lot of people had problems with that. Well, maybe they have less problems with it now, because this week, and you were the first person I thought of when this came out, because you and I got a lot of grief for saying it at the time, many months ago. Netanyahu unveils plans to construct settlements for Israelis in Gaza, backed by a staggering investment of $5 billion.
Well, he's got $26 billion to play with as of yesterday, so why not?
So, as you know, Scott, if we look through the timeline, we had the savages, and they're savages, from Hamas go into Israel, inflict damage, although there were a lot of casualties, actually, as reported by Haaretz, the news agency in Israel. There were a lot of those that died on October 7th on the Israeli side were actually killed by friendly fire when the military did show up. Then Israel went into Gaza. April 1st, 2024, Iran bombed the consulate Israel bombed the consulate in Syria of Iran. And then Iran on April 12th, 13th, went after Israel. Supposedly there wasn't much damage there, although that didn't quite add up. And then this past week on April 18th, Israel reportedly attacked 3 sites. One, Iranian assets in Iraq, another Iranian asset in Syria, and according to the Pentagon, Iran and Israel, there were attacks occurring in Iran of Iranian assets. But then, Scott, miraculously, a couple hours later, everything related to the Israeli attacks in Iraq and Syria were wiped clean. Hard to find any information on that. And then they were saying, no, there really weren't anything occurring in Iran, that there was no Israeli attack in Iran, when the Pentagon, Iran, and Israel had all confirmed that there were actually attacks occurring, in particular going after Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, I understand the fog of war and everything, but you know what, Scott? None of that added up. Did it add up to you?
No, it really didn't. The big thing, even when you look, and the Israeli defense, secretary or minister basically says that the attacks were lame, and puts that out on Twitter. You've got to be kidding me. So I think when they first started, they're going right into the same propaganda media trope of Ukraine kicking the crap out of Russia, which is the actual opposite of what's really happening. And I think it's the same paper tiger, ooh, look at us, beat our chest, we're doing so good, we're doing this and that and that. But thinking that they're back to an adversary that was 30, 40 years ago. It's not. Technology has changed so greatly that taking drones out of the skies is child's play. That's easy. And Iran's got all those capabilities too. And I was really surprised with how strategic the Iranian strike was in probing the defenses and making Israel unleash $1 billion worth of missiles to try and take everything down, learning exactly where each one of those missile batteries are, what capabilities they're bringing to the table. It's the same thing that we did with Iraq back in the day, is that we would go and probe their defenses with all their surface-to-air missile systems so we'd get them to light up so we could pinpoint them and see how they were going to conduct business. And then when we decided to go, we knew where everything was and we could target it and use other capabilities to circumvent whatever they're using as their defense.
So based on your history, Scott, of being involved in these type of operations, when we look at the event on April 12th and 13th, when Iran went after Israel, is it safe to say that the destruction that was occurred when either exposure of their missile defense systems, the fact that Israel spent $100 billion to take about $60 million of ordnance of Iran out of the sky, is it safe to say that if you had to give a win or loss on that event, that there was actually more destruction on the ground that Israel actually ended up fessing up to, and that in fact there was more of a W for Iran on that front than Israel? Is that a safe statement to make as it relates to when Iran went after Israel on April 12th and 13th?
I think it was a win for Iran in strategically, definitely, and then also in the geopolitical realm of, hey, we can strike you anytime we want because you have no defenses against our hypersonic missiles.
So now let's look at April 18th, when Israel responded to Iran. So the Pentagon, Israel, and Iran all stated that Israel was attacking Iraq, Iranian assets in Iraq, Iranian assets in Syria, and in Iran itself, and in particular, nuclear facilities. All three entities said that. Yet several hours later, they said, forget what we said. It was a limited attack. It did not involve any attacks into Iran itself. And we're not even talking about Iraq and Syria anymore. So, Scott, how about this scenario? You tell me if I'm off. Israel did in fact attack Iran. It did not turn out well, as they would have anticipated. And when that didn't turn out so well, there were some calls made to the United States saying, we got a problem, Houston. This is not working out. Enter the United States, who then gets involved and says, okay, what's it going to take for everybody to just shut the heck up and pretend this didn't happen? Okay, Scott, what are the odds of that actually being what happened?
I think that's exactly what happened. And it's going to be one where, hey, we'll just sneak some more billions of dollars and release those funds to some Iranian proxies, and they can divvy up the goods afterwards. Here's your hush money. Just be quiet. This never happened. That's what I think is going on.
And Scott, you mentioned, I believe, that when Israel had announced that, well, this didn't, we really didn't have a big effect in what we did tonight on April 18th, correct? Didn't Israel come out with that statement?
Yep, sure did.
Okay. In your experience, being in the military for several decades, fighter pilot, in charge of big-time operations, have you ever heard Israel say that?
Absolutely not. They have always touted themselves as the undefeatable King Kong of the region. And for them to put that out there and the way of strategic communications, it's very interesting. And I don't know if it's from a standpoint of, hey, we just got our hands slapped trying to fight back on the schoolyard bully, and we don't want to get them to initiate an attack back on us, even though our attack failed, and now we're going to involve the U.S. to try and calm things back down again.
So, Scott, many people are saying, well, Iran got their retribution on Israel, and then Israel, although Israel is admitting it wasn't really that effective, Israel got their retribution on Iran, and well, this situation in the Middle East is done. It's over. It's fini. It's it. Okay, Scott, what's your take?
No, we're just going into round 3. That's what's happening. So they're taking a respite. I know that Passover's coming, so they're going to try to say, oh, we're not going to do anything during Passover. So between the 22nd and the 30th, we're just going to quiet things down and see how things turn out. Much like waiting for Ramadan to finish before Iran had any response. So part of it, it's almost this tense waiting game on what's going to happen next. But I can guarantee whatever happens next is going to have a massive response from Iran. That now that they know they can penetrate and have shown that they can penetrate the air defenses and show that the Iron Dome is not invincible, that getting them to spend $1 billion to shoot down maybe $10 million worth of drones, that's not a pretty good trade there. And it's one where it becomes a war of attrition. So once all those missiles come out of the Iron Dome, how are you going to reload it if you don't have any more?
Scott, what are the odds that Iran does something, says, okay, well, hey, you guys just did something over here to us. Hey, it's Passover in Israel, but okay, knock yourself out. But we're going to do. What are the odds that Iran's going to do something over Passover?
I think they're going to hold back because I think Putin is in their ear, giving them a strategic pause, and holding not really holding them back, but coaching them on the right way to approach things, and being very patient with the process. Because what they did when they launched all the drones, and they did that, and so the entire country of Israel, they all know it's coming. The whole world knows it's coming, and it's hours and hours of people. Am I going to the bunker? Am I hiding? The unknowns of this coming over. They don't know what it is, and in putting that mindset into the general populace is very powerful. And what comes the next time can be even more so, but it puts them on that footing. And when you read into you have various war hawks within the Israeli government, just like you have with the U.S. government. But when you get into those closed-door meetings and processes and things that they're looking to implement, you'll have half the country jump to the airport and get out.